a quiet archive record. Tonight, we're stepping into a slow unfolding. Settle in, let the outside world dissolve, and gently descend into tonight's world. Tonight's record concerns a small coastal city that no longer appears on most maps, and a building that insists on being remembered, even when its doors are sealed. I will speak as plainly as the archive allows. A voice answered when no living throat was present, and it answered with patience, as if it had been waiting for a question asked kindly. This is an interview with Maris Pell. Chapter 1. The Museum That Locks Itself. I arrived at the edge of the old harbour at an hour when the sky could not decide on colour. There are places that always look like evening, even at noon, as if the light has been stored away in jars and rationed carefully. The locals call this district Stillwater Key, though it has not been called that officially for nearly 100 years. The building at the end of the quay is a museum by name and a vault by temperament. It is not grand. It is not Gothic. It is the kind of structure that was made to endure salt air and bored weather. Brick, pale stone, wide steps worn in the middle, iron-framed windows that catch the sea's dull shine. The sign above the entrance reads, Stillwater Maritime Museum, closed to the public. Someone had added, in a neat hand on a placard beneath, appointments by request. No photographs, no loud voices. I had requested an appointment. The confirmation arrived by mail on a card so thick it felt like a door. It gave only a time and a note. Bring something that remembers you. I had brought a small object, not antique, not valuable. A key from my childhood house, no longer used, polished by years of being turned in the same lock. It was not my first choice, but it was the most honest. It remembered my hand. The museum door opened before I touched it. Inside, the air had the steady dryness of a place that has been closed for a long time, but is still cared for. The lobby smelled faintly of varnish and old rope. The sound of my footsteps was swallowed quickly, as if the floorboards had grown soft with listening. A man stood behind the front desk. He wore a cardigan with elbow patches. His hair was grey, combed carefully, and his eyes were a professional kind of tired. He looked like every curator who has ever tried to keep history from becoming decoration. "You are on time," he said. "Thank you. I received your card." He glanced at my hands. "Did you bring it?" I held up the key. He did not take it. He only nodded, as if he had not expected a key, but had expected something. "Good. Keep it with you. The archive responds better when you are anchored." "To what?" "To yourself," he said, and the way he said it made me feel briefly as if my name were an uncertain thing. He came around the desk and led me through a hallway lined with framed photographs. Men in heavy coats standing beside ships, women on docks waving, children holding shells as if they were treasure. The glass was clean, the frames were dusted. Someone was tending this place, even in its closure. We stopped at a door marked Staff Only. The curator took out his own key, unlocked it, and pushed it open. The room beyond was not a staff room. It was a reading room, but not for books. The walls were lined with tall cabinets. Each cabinet had drawers labeled with careful handwriting. Sound cylinders, logbooks, lantern lenses, personal effects, uncatalogued. In the center was a long table, and above the table hung a lamp with a green glass shade. Its light was not bright. It made a pool of calm. "This is the lantern room," the curator said. "We use it for private consultations." "Consultations with what?" He did not answer directly. He set a small recorder on the table, the kind used by archivists who do not trust memory to behave. He placed a notebook beside it. Then he pulled out a chair for me. "You will speak into this," he said, tapping the recorder. "You will also write. Not because it needs you to, but because you do. When people leave here, they sometimes find that their thoughts do not line up the way they used to. Writing helps." He sat across from me, but did not sit fully. He perched, as if ready to stand quickly. "Before we begin," I said, "tell me your name." He hesitated. It was a small hesitation, but it carried weight. "Harrow," he said. "Mr. Harrow, if you like. And you believe there is someone here." Mr. Harrow's gaze moved to the cabinets, then to the lamp, then back to me. "I believe there is a record that does not want to be misfiled. I believe there is a presence that has learned how to speak without lungs. I believe," he added, and his voice softened, "that she is less interested in frightening anyone than in being known properly." "She," I repeated. He nodded once. "Her name was Maris Pell." I placed my key on the table near the recorder. It looked small in the green light. Mr. Harrow reached into his pocket and drew out a folded sheet of paper. He opened it and slid it toward me. It was a set of simple instructions in his neat hand. 1. Speak slowly. 2. Do not demand. 3. If you feel the room become too quiet, ask permission to continue. 4. If she answers, thank her. 5. Leave the object you brought in your pocket when you exit. Do not set it down outside. I looked up. "These are for her. For you," he said. "Most people come in here like they are hunting. She responds better to visitors who come like they are listening." He stood, and for a moment I thought he would leave, but he remained by the door, hands clasped in front of him, as if he were part of the room's architecture. "Will you stay?" I asked. "I will be here," he said. "Not to interfere, to witness. The archive prefers a witness." "What is the archive exactly?" Mr. Harrow's mouth tightened. If I knew how to explain it without insulting it, I would. Think of it as a habit of the place, a place that remembers itself. I turned on the recorder. The tiny red light blinked, patient and indifferent. I took a breath and spoke into the green-lit stillness. "Archive record," I said. "Date and time noted. Location: Stillwater Maritime Museum, Lantern Room. Interviewer present." The room remained quiet. Not the ordinary quiet of a closed museum, but a quiet with attention. It felt as if the air had leaned in. I cleared my throat. "If there is someone here who wishes to speak, you have my permission. I will listen." At first, nothing. I watched the lamp's green shade and tried to keep my mind from racing ahead. I could hear my own breathing. Then the lamp did something subtle. The light did not flicker. It softened. The pool of green widened by a fraction, as if the lamp had sighed. A voice came, not from one direction, but from the room itself. It was not loud. It was not distorted. It was simply present, as if it had always been present, and I had finally tuned my attention properly. "You brought a key," the voice said. Mr. Harrow did not move. His eyes were on the table, not on me, as if he had learned that looking directly could be rude. "Yes," I said. "I did. My name is..." The voice interrupted gently. "I do not need your name. Not yet. Names are heavy. You carry yours. I carry mine. We can set them down later if we need to." I swallowed. "Are you Maris Pell?" There was a pause that felt like a hand hovering over a page, deciding where to begin. "I was," the voice said. "I am." I am learning which tense holds me without breaking. Thank you for speaking, I said, remembering the instructions. The lamp's light warmed slightly, though no heat touched my skin. You thank me like a clerk, Maris said. Not unkind, just practiced. I am nervous, I admitted. You are alive, she said. Nervous is one of your honest proofs. I glanced at Mr. Harrow. He gave the smallest nod, as if to say, continue. Maris, I said, and the name felt like a smooth stone in my mouth. What are you doing here? Why this room? Because it is a lantern room, she said. Not the kind at the top of a lighthouse, but close enough in spirit. Lanterns are for guiding. They are for keeping something from being swallowed by dark. This room was made to hold light and records and careful hands. It suits me. What do you want from this interview? Another pause. The green light seemed to thicken like fog caught in a beam. I want you to notice what you usually do not notice, she said. I want you to ask the questions you avoid, because they would change the way you walk through your own days. I want to be placed correctly in the archive, not as a haunting, not as a warning, as a person who crossed a threshold and found that the world did not end. It continued in a different texture. I wrote that down, my pen scratching too loudly in the calm. Maris seemed amused. Yes, right. You will want to prove to yourself later that you did not invent me. I have to ask, I said. Can you move things? Can you affect the world? I can, sometimes, she said. But it is not like the stories. I do not throw chairs. I do not scratch walls. That kind of violence is a language. I have other words. What words? Light, she said, and the lamp softened again. Temperature, pressure, small changes in sound, the direction your eyes turn. Sometimes I can take a thought you were about to drop and hold it up to your attention so you actually see it. A chill ran through me, not from fear, but from the intimacy of that idea. Mr. Harrow spoke for the first time since the voice began. She has done that, he said quietly, still not looking directly. More than once. Maris did not respond to him, but the lamp's green light held steady, like a nod. Maris, I said, are you trapped here? Trapped is a word the living love, she said. It makes you feel useful, as if you could rescue us and be heroes. No, I am not trapped. I am entangled with this place, with what I did here, with what I failed to do. What did you do here? I catalogued, she said, and there was a faint dryness to it, humor without teeth. I filed the lives of sailors into drawers. I recorded storms after the storms were done. I labeled ropes that had once been held by hands that never came back. I was good at it, and being good at it made me believe I could control what is lost. Did you die here? Maris paused long enough that my pulse filled my ears. Then she said, yes. Mr. Harrow's fingers tightened briefly around each other. How? Maris answered without melodrama. In the simplest way. Alone. Quietly. With my own stubbornness for company. I worked late. I always worked late. The world outside was loud with celebration that night. It was the festival of lanterns before they stopped holding it. People carried lights along the quay, laughing, kissing, promising. I was inside with my cabinets and my lists, telling myself I would join them when I finished one more drawer. Her voice grew thinner, not weaker, but more distant, as if she were looking down a long hallway. I climbed to the upper storage loft to retrieve a logbook. There were stairs that were always slightly damp from sea air. I knew they were damp. I told myself I would fix them. I told myself I had time. My foot slipped. My head met the edge of a crate. The world went white, then green, then nothing. The lamp's light dimmed slightly at the last word. I breathed out slowly. "I'm sorry." "You were kind," she said, and there was no pity in it, only recognition. "But do not make my death your sadness. It is mine. It belongs to me. Your job is to understand what happened after." "Then tell me," I said, voice low. "What happened after?" Maris did not answer immediately. The room seemed to listen harder. Even the cabinets felt attentive, their drawers shut like mouths holding secrets. "After," she said at last. "It's a strange word. It implies a line. But what I found was not a line. It was a room behind a room. A tide beneath a tide. I did not go to a shining gate. I did not see a judge. I woke in a texture, and the first thing I noticed was that I could hear the building's memory. The building's memory," I repeated. "Every step ever taken on these boards," she said. "Every whisper that bounced off these walls. Every time someone touched the banister with a nervous hand, the building had absorbed it. Not like a recording, not like a ghost story. Like a body remembers a scar, even when the skin looks smooth." Mr. Harrow inhaled slowly, as if the words struck something in him he had been trying not to name. Maris continued. "I woke into that memory and found I could move through it, not like walking, like drifting through a book that is also a sea." I wrote again, my pen loud, my hand shaking slightly. "May I continue?" I asked, remembering instruction 3. The lamp brightened a fraction. "Yes," Maris said. "Continue." And so we did. Chapter 2. The other side of the tide. There are interviews that feel like extracting information, and interviews that feel like sitting beside a river while someone points out the currents. This was the latter. Maris did not give me a neat cosmology. She offered images, sensations, careful qualifiers, as if she were determined not to lie, even accidentally. "Describe the other side," I said. "If you can. What is it like where you are now?" Maris made a sound that might have been a laugh if it had been in a throat. "You want me to describe water to a fish that has never been wet?" "I'm willing to be wet," I said. Mr. Harrow shifted slightly, a small sound of fabric. He still did not interrupt. Maris spoke slowly. "It is not a place," she began, "the way your maps insist. It is not a cloud, not a cavern, not a grand hall. It is a layer, like the varnish on old wood, like the thin film of salt that forms on a window facing the sea. It is on top of your world and inside it at the same time. Can you see the living world from there?" "I can see it," she said, "but not always as you see it. Colors come differently. Edges blur unless I hold them. The living world is loud with intention. It is full of people pulling on the threads of tomorrow. That noise makes it hard to focus sometimes." "Noise," I repeated. "Not sound, but intention." "Yes," she said. "Your body's broadcast. You broadcast hunger and worry and plans, and little lies you tell yourself to get through the day. It spills out of you. When I was alive, I had my own broadcast, and it made the world feel like mine. When I died, my broadcast changed. The world did not stop. My signal just shifted frequency. I rubbed my thumb against the key in my pocket through the fabric, grounding myself. What does it feel like, I asked, to exist without a body? There was a long pause. The lamp's green light steadied as if giving her time. It feels, she said carefully, like being a thought that has become patient. When you are alive, you are pulled by your body. Your heart pulls you. Your stomach pulls you. Your skin pulls you. Your lungs pull you. They are all making demands. Without them, there is an immense quiet. Mr. Harrow's throat moved as he swallowed. Maris continued. At first, that quiet is terrifying. You think you have been erased. You look for your heartbeat the way a child looks for a parent in a crowd. But then you notice that the quiet is not emptiness. It is space. Space for what? For noticing, she said. For remembering without panic. For feeling without being shoved into action. For being aware of your own shape, even when that shape is not made of flesh. Do you have a shape? I asked. Sometimes, Maris said. When I concentrate, I can hold an outline. It is not a body, not exactly. It is like the idea of a body, like when you close your eyes and remember your own hands. You can feel them without seeing them. I can do that, and the world responds as if I am present in a place. So you can choose to be here, I said, gesturing subtly to the room, or elsewhere. Within limits, she said. The places I can reach are like rooms connected by doors. Some doors are open, some are locked. Some doors were never built for me, and I can only press my ear to the wall and listen. Who decides the doors? Maris paused. Partly the living, partly the dead. Partly the places themselves, and partly the habits you call fate. The word fate in her voice did not sound like romance. It sounded like weather. Is there anyone else there? I asked. Other people like you? Yes, she said. But they are not all like me. Death does not make us the same. It strips away some things and reveals others. Some people become very small. They curl inward, like a hand closing around a secret. Some become very wide. They spread through places they loved. Some move on quickly. They let go. They do not cling to the varnish of the world. And you, I said, have not let go. I have let go of some things, she corrected. I have let go of my hunger. I have let go of my pain. I have let go of my fear of storms. I have not let go of my unfinished sentences. What sentences? Maris's voice softened. The ones I never spoke to the people who mattered. The ones I never spoke to myself. The lamp's light deepened to a richer green, as if the room leaned toward empathy. I asked, why speak now? Why to me? Because you came with a key, she said again, and I realized that to her, the key was not just an object. It was a symbol of entry and return. And because Mr. Harrow asked, she added with a faint warmth. Mr. Harrow blinked slowly, as if surprised to be addressed indirectly. He asked you to speak, I said. He asked the room, Maris said. He has been here for a long time. He has watched people come in, hoping for spectacle. He has watched them leave, disappointed, when they did not get a scream. He has watched others leave shaken because they got something quieter, something that changed them and did not know how to carry it. What did he ask for? I asked. Maris answered with care. He asked for someone to tell the story properly. He asked for someone to stop treating me like a rumor. He asked for an interview. There was silence, and in that silence, I felt Mr. Harrow's relief like a small exhale that had been held for years. I leaned closer to the recorder. Maris Pell, I said, I will do my best to tell it properly, but I have to ask, what is the purpose of the archive? Why does this place hold you? Maris's response came with a subtle shift in pressure, as if the air in the room settled more densely around the table. The archive is not only cabinets, she said. It is not only labels. It is not only the museum. The archive is the agreement between the living and the dead. The living agree to remember. The dead agree to not be lost. Places like this are where the agreement is thick enough to stand on. That sounds, I said slowly, almost like the building is alive. Maris replied, "Not alive, but awake. There is a difference. A stone is not alive, but it can be warm in the sun. A building is not alive, but it can hold the shape of those who pass through it. When you have enough passing, enough attention, enough grief, enough love, the place becomes aware in its own way." I tried to imagine awareness without eyes, memory without mind. Maris added, "You are used to thinking of consciousness as something trapped inside a skull. Here, consciousness is more like weather. It moves, it gathers, it dissipates. It can be drawn by certain conditions." "What conditions draw you?" I asked. "Kindness," she said simply. "Not pity, not curiosity that wants to consume. Kindness that wants to understand. Also," she added, and there was a hint of humor, "routine. The archive loves routine. Mr. Harrow's steps, the dusting, the careful unlocking, the predictable turning on of the lamp." Mr. Harrow cleared his throat, almost embarrassed. "So, you appear when the lamp is on?" I asked. "I appear when attention is shaped into an invitation," she said. "The lamp helps. The lamp is a signal. It says, 'We are here to look carefully.'" I looked at the lamp. It was ordinary enough. Green shade, brass stem, pull chain. And yet, under Maris's description, it became a sort of lighthouse for conversation. "Can you leave this museum?" I asked. "I can," she said. "But leaving is not always wise. The world outside is loud. The city has changed. The key is not what it was. The sea is still the sea, but the humans around it have different songs. If I drift too far, I become thin. It is like trying to hold your breath while running. So you stay where you are strongest." "I stay where I am held," she corrected. "Where the archive gives me weight. Here, I can press against the world a little. I can make the lamp brighten. I can make the air cool. I can make your pen hesitate. Outside, I become a whisper that even I can barely hear." I asked, "Is that what it is like for all the dead? Do they all need an anchor?" Maris paused. "Some become their own anchor. Some are held by people. Some are held by places. Some are held by a promise. And some are not held at all. They dissolve into something larger, not in a tragic way, in a natural way." "Do you want to dissolve?" I asked. Her answer came slowly, as if she were choosing each word from a drawer. "Not yet," she said. "Not until I have made peace with the part of me that thought control was the same as care." The sentence landed softly, but it felt heavy in my chest. "Maris," I said, "tell me about your life, not just your death." The lamp's green light widened again, like a door opening. "All right," she said, "but you must promise to not rush. My life was not a single dramatic event. It was 100 small decisions. I want you to see them." "I promise," I said. Maris began, and as she did, the museum seemed to shift around us. Not physically, not with moving walls, but with attention. The cabinets, the drawers, the labels. They felt less like furniture and more like assembled memory, waiting to be touched by story. Chapter 3. Maris, before the name became a whisper. Maris told her life the way an archivist might, not in dates, but in categories. She began with origins, not as a romantic notion, but as a fact that shaped her. "I was born inland," she said, "in a town where the river was the biggest thing anyone ever saw. The sea was a rumor. People spoke of it like they spoke of distant relatives, vaguely, with a mix of pride and suspicion. How did you end up here?" I asked. "Because I was restless," she said. "A and because I was good at being useful. Those two qualities can take you far, but they can also trap you in a kind of service you never question. She described her first job at a small library, shelving books, repairing spines, learning the difference between keeping a thing safe and keeping it hidden. I loved the smell of paper, she said. I loved the order. I loved that each book had a place. I loved that the world could be arranged into categories and therefore felt less wild. Did you feel the world was wild? I asked. Maris gave a pause that felt like a nod. Yes. My mother died when I was young. Not in a dramatic way. Illness. The kind that takes and then leaves you with an empty chair that no one wants to sit in. After that, the world felt like a room where someone had moved the furniture in the dark. You keep bumping into things you didn't expect. I am sorry, I said again, quieter this time. Thank you, she said. But again, do not make my life a tragedy. It had warmth. I had friends. I had laughter. I had a talent for making tea strong enough to wake the dead, which is ironic now. Mr. Harrow made a faint sound that might have been a smile. Maris continued. I went to the city for schooling. I studied preservation, not just books, objects, the way materials age, the way salt corrodes, the way wood warps. I learned how to slow decay. I became obsessed with slowing decay. Because of your mother, I said softly. Because of everything, she corrected. Because the world was always losing things. And I thought if I could slow the losing, I could bargain with fate. She described arriving in Stillwater as a young woman, the first time seeing the sea. It was too big, she said. I stood on the quay and felt my body go quiet. The sea does that. It makes your personal worries seem small. It also makes you realize how little you control. And did you like that feeling? I hated it, she admitted. And I loved it. I hated it because I wanted to be the one in charge. I loved it because something in me knew I was tired of pretending I could be. She worked first as an assistant at the museum, then as an archivist. The museum, she said, was not popular. It was a place locals visited once in school and then avoided because it smelled like loss. But I loved it, she said. I loved the quiet. I loved that each object had a story that could be held in your hands. A compass with a cracked glass face, still pointing north even when the ship that carried it was gone. A child's carved whale made from driftwood, smoothed by anxious fingers. A lantern lens, heavy and beautiful, designed to throw light farther than any human voice could travel. Was the lantern room always here? I asked. Yes, she said. This room was once the curator's private office. Then it became a storage space. Then Mr. Harrow turned it into what it is now, because he understood that certain conversations require a lamp and a table. It is an old idea. She spoke of people she knew. A dock worker who donated a sailor's coat and cried quietly while signing the paperwork. A retired captain who insisted on telling each story twice to make sure it stuck. A teenager who volunteered just to get out of the rain and ended up spending hours reading logbooks because she wanted proof that adventures were real. Did you have family? I asked. Maris paused. I had a brother. He left. He could not bear the town after our mother. He went to a different life. We wrote letters. Then the letters grew fewer. Then they stopped. Did you ever see him again? No, she said, and the word was plain, like a drawer shutting. And that is one of my unfinished sentences. What would you say to him now? I asked. Maris did not answer immediately. The lamp's green light trembled slightly, not flickering, but changing density, as if emotion passed through it. I would say, she began slowly, that I understand why he left, that I was angry at him for leaving me with our grief, but that grief was never his to carry alone, that I was proud of him for surviving in his own way, that I am sorry I made silence feel like punishment. The room felt thick with that apology. I wrote it down. My handwriting had become messier, as if my hand could not keep up with meaning. Did you ever love anyone? I asked. Maris's voice grew warmer, surprising me. Yes, but not in the way people like to tell, not in a sweeping romance. It was steady. A man named Tomlin. He was a shipwright. He smelled like sawdust and salt. He laughed with his whole body. He could not sit still. He would come into the museum on his lunch breaks, not because he cared about history, but because he cared about me. What happened to him? I asked. Maris's voice softened further, and I felt the room's attention sharpen, as if anticipating pain. He asked me to leave Stillwater, she said. He wanted to go north. There was work building new ships. He said we could have a small house where the wind was not always wet. He said I could build an archive there if I wanted. He did not demand I become someone else. He offered me a door. And did you take it? No, she said simply. Mr. Harrow exhaled slowly. Why not? I asked, though I already suspected. Because I was afraid, she said. Because the museum needed me. Because I had built my identity out of being needed. Because leaving would have meant admitting that the world could continue without my careful hands. Because I thought love was something you could schedule after you finished your work. And what did Tomlin do? He left without me, she said. Not angrily, not cruelly. He left with sadness and respect. He said, Maris, I cannot be your next drawer. The phrase struck me, a person refusing to be catalogued. Maris continued. He sent letters, for a while. He described the north. He described the smell of pine. He described new ships, sleek and bright. He asked again. I kept saying later. Eventually the letters stopped. Do you know what happened to him? I asked. I do not, she said. And there was genuine regret, not melodramatic, but deep. And that is another unfinished sentence. It is also a punishment I gave myself without intending to. I thought I was choosing duty. I was also choosing a kind of loneliness. I sat back slightly. The museum's quiet had become a companion rather than a threat. Maris, I said, do you think you would have died if you had left? A pause. Perhaps not, she said. But be careful. The living love to imagine a different timeline as a place they could actually inhabit. It is comforting to believe you could fix everything with one different choice. But life is not a single hinge. It is many hinges, and some of them squeak no matter what you do. Still, I said gently, it sounds like you regret staying. I regret the way I stayed, she corrected. I regret making my work a substitute for my heart. Work is not bad. Preservation is not bad. But I used it to avoid being vulnerable. I used it to avoid needing anyone. And now, I said, you need this interview. You need to be known. Maris gave a soft response that could have been agreement. Perhaps, she said, or perhaps I simply want to give what I have learned to someone still in time. What have you learned? I asked. Maris's voice took on a steadier tone, like someone setting an object carefully on a table. That you cannot preserve everything. That loss is not always failure. That memory is a living thing, and if you trap it too tightly, it stops breathing. that love is not a distraction from purpose. It is a kind of purpose. Mr. Harrow's eyes glistened faintly in the green light. He blinked, and the moisture vanished, but the feeling remained. I asked, "When you died, did you know you were dying?" Maris answered with a quiet honesty. "I knew I was falling. I knew there was pain. I knew there was surprise. Then there was a moment where everything went very far away. In that moment, I thought, absurdly, I've not turned off the lamp." "The lamp," I whispered, glancing up. "Yes," she said. Even as my body stopped, my mind clung to the routine, to the small responsibility. That is who I was. That is what I mean by entangled. I let the silence sit for a few seconds, not wanting to fill it with my own discomfort. Then I asked, "Did anyone find you?" "Yes," she said. "The next morning, a cleaning woman named Elsie. She screamed. Not because she was easily frightened, but because the human body is shocking when it is empty of the person. She called for help. They carried me out. The festival lanterns had burned out hours ago. The quay was littered with wax. People stepped around it like it was just mess. I watched from above the stairs, and I could not tell whether I was still me, or whether I was a memory already being filed. The way she said filed made the words sound like burial. "Could you see yourself?" I asked. "Not the way you imagine," she said. I could sense the shape that had been mine, but my attention was already loosening from it, like a glove being pulled off. I felt no pain. I felt astonishment. "Astonishment," I repeated. "Yes," she said, because the world did not stop, because I had expected deep down that my death would be a kind of punctuation, but it was only a comma in the building's long sentence. I looked at my notes. The recorder's red light blinked steadily, still capturing. "Maris," I said, "what is it like to watch the living continue?" Maris answered, "It is like watching waves. You can be angry that they keep coming, but you cannot stop them. You can only decide whether you will stand in them and feel their cold, or retreat and let them pass without touching you. And which do you do?" Maris's voice warmed. "Lately, I stand in them. Mr. Harrow helped. He does not treat me like a spectacle. He speaks to the room as if speaking to a colleague. That respect gave me courage." Mr. Harrow nodded once, still quiet. I asked, "Do you miss your body?" Maris paused, then replied with a surprising clarity. "I miss touch. I miss the weight of a mug in my hand. I miss the way wool feels against skin in winter. I miss warmth that comes from within, not from a lamp. I miss tiredness sometimes. Tiredness is a proof you have spent your day. And what do you not miss?" "Pain," she said, almost immediately. "And hunger. And the way fear can take over your organs and make you small. Fear still exists here, but it is not hormonal. It is not a flood. It is more like a thought you can examine." "That sounds," I said, "almost peaceful." "It can be," she said. "But peace is not automatic. You do not die and become wise. You die and become more purely what you already were. If you were cruel, you become a sharper cruelty. If you were kind, you become a more patient kindness. If you were anxious, you become a looping question. If you were obsessed, you become a drawer that will not close." The phrase stayed with me, a drawer that will not close. I sat very still. "Maris," I said, "are you at peace?" She answered, "Not fully, but I am closer than I was." "And what brings you closer?" Maris said, "Conversation, witness, the willingness of the living to hold a story without turning it into entertainment." I looked at Mr. Harrow, then back toward the lamp. Then I will continue, I said, with your permission. The green light brightened slightly. With my permission, she said, ask what you need to ask. Chapter 4. The small powers of a gentle haunting. I did not want to ask the questions that would reduce her to a list of phenomena, and yet the archive record needed clarity. The living mind needs edges, categories, evidence. The trick was to ask in a way that respected the person inside the phenomenon. Maris, I said, you mentioned you can affect light, temperature, pressure, attention. Can you explain how? Not in scientific terms, if that is impossible, but in your own terms. Maris's voice took on a thoughtful cadence. It is like this, she said. Imagine your body is a boat. When you were alive, you moved through the world with the boat. You could push water aside. You could leave a wake. Now imagine the boat is gone, but you are still in the water. You cannot push in the same way, but you can make ripples, small ones, with focus. So focus is your strength, I said. Yes, she replied. Focus and permission. There are currents here that resist. If I try to force something, it slides away. But if I ask, if I align with the place's own willingness, it is easier. Permission from whom? I asked. From the building, from the archive, from something else? Maris paused. From the layer itself, from the way things want to be. It is difficult to explain. In your world, you can pick up a cup because your hand can grip it and gravity cooperates. Here, I can influence a cup only if the cup is already on the edge of being moved. If someone is about to bump it, if the table is slightly uneven, if the air is already shifting, I do not create motion from nothing. I nudge motion that is waiting. A nudge, I said. Yes, she said. A gentle haunting is mostly nudging. Mr. Harrow, still by the door, spoke softly. The lamp is the clearest example. Some evenings it seems to brighten when she is present. Maris responded, because light is receptive. Light is already traveling. I only adjust the lens. I looked at the lamp again. Can you make it turn off? I can, she said. But I rarely do. Darkness makes the living panic, and panic is loud. I prefer the living to be calm. Calm is a door. Can you touch people? I asked, and felt my own nervousness rise. Maris answered carefully. Not as you think. I cannot grab. I cannot hold. But I can create a sensation, sometimes. Like the pressure of a hand through thick fabric. Like a temperature change that your skin interprets as presence. If someone is receptive, if they are not locked in their skepticism like armor, they may feel me. Have you done that to Mr. Harrow? I asked. Mr. Harrow stiffened slightly, then relaxed. He did not answer. He let Maris. Maris said, with a hint of fondness, yes, once when he was very tired and very sad. He sat at this table long after closing and put his head in his hands. I did not want him to think he was alone, so I cooled the air around him in the shape of a shawl, the way his wife used to drape a blanket over his shoulders when he fell asleep in his chair. Mr. Harrow's eyes closed briefly. When he opened them, his gaze was fixed on the table, as if it were the only stable thing in the room. I did not know if he would understand, Maris added. But he did. He whispered, "Thank you." The story made my throat tighten. It was not frightening. It was intimate, gentle, and it carried the weight of loneliness on both sides. "Maris," I said, "can you speak to anyone? Or only to those invited here?" "I can speak in other ways," she said. "Sometimes I slip into dreams. Dreams are easier because the mind is already in the layer where I am. but I do not like to intrude. Dreams are private. I prefer invitations. Do people invite you? I asked. Rarely, she said. Most people come with demands. They say, prove it, show me. They treat me like a trick. Demands make my voice thin. Invitations make it strong. Do you ever get angry at them? I asked. Maris replied, sometimes I feel a sharpness, but anger here is different. It does not flood me. It is more like a bell that rings once and then stops. I can choose what to do with the ringing. And what do you do? I remember that I was once alive and ignorant, she said. I remember how fear makes people rude. I remember that some of them have lost someone and they are desperate for proof. Desperation is also a kind of love. I nodded slowly. You have a lot of compassion. It is easier when you are not distracted by needing to eat, she said, with that dry humor again. Hunger makes you impatient. I asked, can you leave a message, like writing or marks? I can influence ink sometimes, she said. Not easily. Ink is stubborn. Paper is stubborn. They belong more firmly to your layer. But I can sometimes make a pen pause in a certain way. I can make a hand choose one word over another. I can guide, like a current guides a boat. My pen hesitated even as she said it, as if to demonstrate. I looked at my hand. I was holding it firmly, yet the hesitation felt real. You are doing that now, I said quietly. Maris did not deny it. Only a little, she said. Only enough to make you pay attention. I do not want to control you. Control is my old habit. I am trying to learn better. Can you move through walls? I asked, feeling silly and yet needing to know. Maris answered, walls are not the obstacle you think. The obstacle is attention. If a wall is ignored, I can pass through it like mist. If a wall is watched, if a wall is believed in, it becomes thicker. So belief matters, I said. Belief is a kind of building material, she said. Your minds build structures all the time. Some structures are helpful. Some are prisons. I asked, what about objects? Can you move them? Make them fall? Open drawers? Maris responded with a calm honesty. Occasionally, but it costs me. It is like lifting something heavy with no muscles. I have to gather myself, gather the place's willingness, gather a small current, and then push. When I succeed, I feel thin afterward. Thin, I repeated. Yes, she said, like being stretched, like being a candle that is burned too long. That is why I do not do tricks. The living think it is easy. They do not see the cost. Mr. Harrow nodded, as if confirming. After she has done something, he said, searching for the right words, the room feels emptier for a time. Maris said, because I have used some of the coherence that holds me. Coherence is like rope. If you cut too much rope, you cannot tie yourself back together. I took a slow breath. Then what restores you? Rest, she said, and attention in certain objects. Objects like my key, I asked. Yes, she said. Objects that have been held with meaning. Objects that are saturated with living time. Your key has a groove from your thumb. That groove is a story. Stories feed me. Is that why the museum is full of objects? I asked. Because they feed whatever is here. Maris replied, not feed like a parasite, feed like a garden. The objects are full of human attention. They hold echoes. In a place like this, the echoes are not just residue. They are part of the building's awareness. I am not consuming them. I am living among them. Do you ever feel lonely? I asked. Maris did not answer immediately. The lamp's light softened. Yes, she said. Loneliness exists here, but it is different. It is not the loneliness of being in a room with no one. It is the loneliness of being unable to be touched, of having thoughts with no easy place to place them. That is why interviews matter. They give my thoughts a place to land. I nodded. Then let them land, I said. Tell me, what do you do all day or all night? Does time matter to you now? Maris said, time is strange. Sometimes it is thick. Sometimes it is thin. Sometimes a minute passes like a wave, and sometimes an hour passes like a blink. I do not sleep. I do not wake. But I have rhythms. When the museum is quiet, I drift through drawers. I listen to the objects. I watch the harbour lights through the windows. I follow the footsteps of the living staff when they come. I learn the patterns. Do you ever go to the sea? I asked. There was a subtle shift in the room, as if the word sea pulled her attention outward. Sometimes, she said, the sea is complicated for me. It is beautiful. It is also the biggest reminder that I cannot control anything. When I go near it now, I can feel its vastness more intensely. Not with skin, but with awareness. It is like standing near a great choir, singing a note so low you feel it in your bones, even if you have no bones. What is it like being near living people outside this room? I asked. Maris answered, it is like standing near a fire. Their warmth is intense. Their thoughts are loud. Their bodies are bright. Sometimes it is comforting. Sometimes it is overwhelming. I am careful not to cling. Clinging would be easy. It would also be wrong. Wrong, I said. Yes, she said, because they are not mine. They have their own lives. I do not want to become a hunger. I respected that. I had heard too many stories where the dead were portrayed as craving, devouring, demanding. Maris was something else. Restrained, observant, ethical. Maris, I said, do you know what happens when you finally let go? When you dissolve, as you said? Her voice became quieter. I do not know for certain, she said. I have listened to those who are further along. Some say they feel a pull, like the tide going out. Some say they feel a warmth, like sunlight through water. Some say they hear music. Some say they simply become less interested in holding their outline until one day they stop holding it. Does that frighten you? I asked. A little, she admitted. Not because I think it is punishment, but because it is unknown. And I was always someone who tried to label the unknown so it would behave. So the lesson is to let the unknown be unknown, I said. Maris's voice warmed. Yes, but you do not have to learn it all at once. Even the dead learn slowly. The lamp's green light seemed to pulse gently, not as a signal of fear, but as a heartbeat substitute, a rhythm of attention. I glanced at the recorder. It had been running for a long time. The tape would be full soon if it still used tape. The device was digital, but my mind still thought in older metaphors, perhaps influenced by the cabinets and drawers. Mr. Harrow, I asked without turning, how long have you been facilitating this? He answered quietly, 6 years. Since the museum closed, since funding stopped, since the city decided history did not pay enough to be kept open, I stayed. Someone had to. And when did you first hear her? I asked. He hesitated, then said, on the first night I slept here. I had a cot in the office. I could not sleep. I felt ridiculous as a grown man sleeping in a museum like a child playing. I said, out loud, well, at least I have the company of the ghosts. Maris's voice came softly, almost teasing. And I said, company is not automatic. You have to ask nicely. Mr. Harrow's mouth twitched, almost a smile, but it was weighted with gratitude. Since then, he continued, we have had an arrangement. I maintain. She remains, and sometimes she speaks. I turned back to the lamp. And tonight, I said, she speaks to the archive. Maris replied, yes, tonight, my words will not vanish when the living person who hears them dies. Tonight, my story becomes a record. There was something profound in that. It was not immortality. It was continuity. Then let us speak of regret, I said. Not to indulge it, but to understand it. All right, Maris said. Regret is one of the few things that can cross layers without losing shape. Chapter 5. Regrets, forgiveness, and the rooms we carry. Regret, Maris explained, is not simply wishing you had done something differently. Regret is a room you keep walking into even after you have moved out of the house. It is a habit of mind, and in death, habits become architecture. When I first died, she said, I kept returning to the stairs. I kept replaying the slip. Not because I wanted to torture myself, but because my mind was trying to file the event properly. It was used to order. But death is not orderly. It is abrupt. My mind did not know what to do with abrupt. How long did you replay it? I asked. Maris answered, time is strange, as I said. But if I translate it into your sense of time, perhaps months, perhaps a year, I do not know. I only know that eventually Mr. Harrow came into the museum late one evening and spoke aloud into the empty lobby. He said, Maris, if you are here, you are allowed to stop falling. Mr. Harrow's breath caught slightly, as if hearing his own words repeated still surprised him. And did that help? I asked. It did, Maris said, because it was permission. The living can give permission in powerful ways. You do not realize it. You think permission is a small social thing, but permission is a key. It opens rooms. I touched my key in my pocket again. The symbolism was almost too neat. But in this place, neatness felt like a kindness, not a contrivance. What regrets do you carry now? I asked. Maris replied, I regret what I did not say. I regret what I pretended did not matter. I regret the way I treated my own joy as optional. I regret that I made myself into a tool and then was surprised when I felt used. Tell me about your joy, I said. What did you love besides order? Maris's voice brightened. I loved storms, she said, surprising me. Not the danger of them, but the spectacle. I loved standing by a window with a cup of tea and watching the rain turn the world into watercolor. I loved the smell of whetstone. I loved the sound of wind in rigging. I loved the way the sea looked like it was thinking. The sea looked like it was thinking, I repeated, smiling slightly despite myself. Yes, she said. It was always thinking. It still is. Sometimes, now, I can almost understand its thoughts. They are slow. They are old. They are not human. She continued. I loved music too. Not concerts. I never went. Too many people. But I loved humming while I worked. Quiet songs. I did not realize how much I loved that until I could no longer make sound with a throat. Can you hear music now? I asked. I can hear, she said. Better in some ways. I can hear the building's creaks as language. I can hear the distant horns of ships and feel them like vibrations through the layer. But I cannot create music easily. That is a grief I did not anticipate. So if someone played music in this room, I said, would you enjoy it? Maris's voice warmed. Yes, if it was played gently. If it was offered, not imposed. Mr. Harrow said quietly, I have played the radio for her sometimes. Low, old songs. Maris replied, "You have, and I have been grateful." I asked, "Maris, what is forgiveness like for you now? Can you forgive yourself?" Maris paused, and the room's green light seemed to deepen, as if the lamp were listening with its whole body. "Forgiveness is not a switch," she said. "It is a practice. When I was alive, I thought forgiveness meant declaring something finished. But now I see it as more like returning to a wound and cleaning it again and again until it no longer infects everything else." "Do you forgive Tomlin for leaving?" I asked. Maris answered immediately. "Yes, he did not abandon me. He refused to abandon himself. That is different." "Do you forgive your brother for disappearing?" I asked. Maris hesitated. "I am trying," she said. "I can understand why he vanished, but understanding does not erase the ache. Forgiveness does not erase ache. It just makes the ache less poisonous." "Do you forgive yourself for staying?" I asked. Maris's voice softened. "Sometimes," she said. "Sometimes I look at the girl I was and I want to shake her. But then I remember she was doing her best with the tools she had. She did not know that love could be as disciplined as work. She thought love was chaos. She preferred cabinets. I asked, if you could speak to your living self now, what would you say? Maris answered slowly. I would say, Maris, you are allowed to be unfinished. You do not have to earn rest. You do not have to earn joy. You do not have to earn love. The words landed in me in an uncomfortable way, as if they applied not only to her. Do you think the dead can help the living? I asked. Yes, she said, but not by solving your problems, not by giving you lottery numbers, not by pushing you into choices. We can help by adjusting your attention, by reminding you that your days are finite, by offering perspective that is not trapped in hunger. That sounds like wisdom, I said. It is not always wisdom, she cautioned. Sometimes it is just distance. Distance can look like wisdom. But yes, sometimes we learn things and can offer them. I asked, have you ever helped someone outside this museum? Maris paused. Once, she said, a young woman came to the quay at night, long after the museum was closed. She stood by the water and cried. She held a letter. She was going to throw it into the sea. I could feel her desperation like heat. What did you do? I asked. I could not speak to her, Maris said. Not directly, but I drifted near the harbour light and made it brighten, just a little. So she looked up. When she looked up, she saw the museum. She walked toward it. The door was locked. She put her forehead against the glass and whispered, I just want someone to know I existed. My chest tightened at the phrase. Maris continued. I could not open the door, but I could press a thought into her mind, gently, the way you might press a flower into a book. The thought was, write it down, leave it somewhere safe. And did she? I asked. Yes, Maris said. She sat on the steps and wrote in the margin of the letter, then slipped it through the mail slot. Mr. Harrow found it the next day. He filed it in the uncatalogued drawer. He did not read all of it. He respected it, but he kept it. The woman returned weeks later, calmer. She did not ask for it back. She only sat on the steps for a while and then left. Mr. Harrow spoke softly. I remember that letter. Maris said, that is how we help. Not by miracles, by small shifts, by giving someone a place to put their words. I asked, is that what you want too? A place to put your words? Yes, Maris said, and also a place to put my regrets so they do not keep looping. Can speaking them end them? I asked. Speaking is not an ending, she said. It is a turning. When you speak a regret kindly, it stops being a trap and becomes a lesson. Lessons can be carried without cutting you. I wrote that down. My hand had steadied. Maris, I said, do you fear being forgotten? She answered, not in the simple way. I do not need strangers to say my name, but I fear being misremembered. I fear becoming a story that teaches the wrong lesson. I do not want to be used as a warning against working late, as if that is the point. The point is not the stairs. The point is the way I postponed my own life. What lesson do you want the archive to hold? I asked. Maris said, that you can be devoted without being self-erasing, that you can preserve history without turning yourself into a relic, that love is not something you do after you finish being useful. Love is part of usefulness. It is the reason usefulness matters. Mr. Harrow's face softened. He looked older in that moment, not with exhaustion, but with recognition. I asked, what is the hardest thing about being where you are now? Maris answered, watching the living hurry, she said. You hurry past each other. You hurry past beauty. You hurry past your own hunger for connection. You hurry as if speed will protect you from loss. But speed does not protect. It only makes you miss the texture of being alive. Do you miss being alive? I asked. Maris paused. Sometimes, she said, but not in a desperate way. I miss it the way you might miss a childhood home. You do not want to move back into it exactly as it was, but you miss the way it felt to believe the world was endless. And do you believe the world is endless now? I asked. Maris replied, no, but I believe it is larger than you think, larger than your fear, larger than your categories, larger than your endings. The lamp's green light seemed to glow with that sentence, as if the room itself agreed. I sat with that for a while. The interview had become less about proving a ghost and more about listening to someone who had crossed a threshold and returned with a report. Eventually, I said, Maris, I want to ask about something delicate. You may, she said. What happens when the living forget a place like this? I asked. When a museum closes, when a building crumbles, when drawers are emptied, when objects are sold. What happens to the archive? What happens to you? The question changed the air. It became colder, not frightening, but serious, like the moment before a storm. Maris answered, that is the true fear, she said. Not hell, not punishment. Dissolution is not fear, but being scattered without context. That is difficult. Scattered, I repeated. Yes, she said. If the building is demolished, the coherence that holds me here will loosen. I might drift. I might attach to one object. I might fade. I do not know. It depends on what remains. It depends on whether anyone remembers with care. Mr. Harrow's hands tightened again. His knuckles were pale. Is that why Mr. Harrow stays? I asked, my voice softer. Maris did not answer for him, but she said, he stays because he loves the place, and because he knows that places die too. Not physically. Places die when they are unloved. He refuses to let this place die unloved. Mr. Harrow looked down, as if the words were too exposing. Then this record matters, I said, feeling the weight of it. It is not just conversation, it is preservation. Maris's voice warmed. Yes, she said, but remember, preservation is not control. You will record this, but you must let it live. Do not trap it. I will not, I promised. The room seemed to accept that promise. The lamp's light softened again, as if easing after tension. I asked, is there anything you want to say that I have not asked? Maris paused for a long time. In that pause, I could hear the faint, distant sound of the harbour beyond the walls, a low horn, perhaps, or the wind shifting through rigging. The museum held steady around us, patient. Then Maris spoke. "Yes," she said. "I want to speak about the moment when I realized I was still myself." "Tell me," I said. "It was days after my death," she began, "or what I perceived as days. I drifted through the museum like smoke. I heard voices. I saw people moving, but I could not reach them. I felt as if I were behind glass. Then, one night, a child snuck in." Mr. Harrow made a small sound of surprise. "A child?" Maris said. "Yes. This was before the museum closed, before the doors were monitored. The child was perhaps 12. He had dared his friends to come in after hours. They ran away laughing, but he stayed. He was brave in a quiet way, the way some children are when they are lonely." She continued. "He walked through the exhibits and whispered to himself, making up stories. He stopped by a display of a shipwreck. He stared at the broken compass. Then he said, out loud, 'If anyone is here, I'm sorry you died.' The simplicity of it struck me. Maris's voice softened. No one had said that to me. The adults had been busy. They had been filing. They had been cleaning. They had been moving on. But the child, he offered a kindness without agenda. And you felt it," I said. "Yes," she said. "I felt it like warmth. And in that warmth, I realized I still had the capacity to receive. That meant I was still someone, not just a residue, not just a story. I was someone who could be addressed." The lamp's green light brightened a fraction, as if remembering warmth. "That child never knew," Maris said. "He never felt me." But his words reached across the layer. They anchored me for a moment. They gave me a name again, even though he did not say it. "What happened to him?" I asked. "I do not know," Maris admitted. "He grew. He left. He is likely living a life full of his own storms. But his moment of kindness stayed in the building. It became part of the archive's awareness. And now I offer that kindness back, when I can. I let the silence sit. It felt like a gentle hand resting on the table, not touching, but close enough to be felt. "Maris," I said, "I think we are nearing the end of what the recorder can hold. Is there anything you want to say to the living who might hear this record?" Maris answered. "Yes," she said. "Tell them, do not rush past your own tenderness. Tenderness is not weakness. It is the part of you that knows what matters. And tell them, if you ever feel like you have become a drawer that will not close, step back. Ask yourself who you are trying to impress with your suffering. Then go to someone you love, or someone who could love you, and speak one unfinished sentence." I wrote that down, my hand steady now, as if her words were guiding me more gently. "And tell them," she added, "that death is not always a door slammed. Sometimes it is a door that opens quietly, and on the other side is not terror, but a different kind of tide." The phrase lingered. I looked at Mr. Harrow. He stood very still, as if he were holding himself together with respect. "Mr. Harrow," I said, "do you want to ask anything?" He hesitated. Then he spoke into the room, voice careful, like someone speaking near a sleeping animal. "Maris," he said, "are you all right? Truly." The question was simple, but it carried years. Maris's voice softened to something almost like affection. "I am not all right," she said, "but I am not lost. There is a difference. I am learning. And you have been kind. That matters." Mr. Harrow's shoulders eased. He nodded once, slowly. I turned back to the recorder. "Maris Pell," I said. "Thank you." If you are willing, I would like to close this record with one final question. Ask, she said. What do you want to happen next? I asked. For you, for this museum, for the archive. The air in the room became very still, as if even dust paused. Maris spoke with quiet conviction. I want the museum to be remembered, she said. Not as a haunted place, but as a place where lives were honored. I want the objects to stay together, if possible. If they must be dispersed, I want them to be dispersed with respect, with their stories attached, not sold like bones. She continued. For myself, I want to finish my unfinished sentences, not by speaking to everyone I ever lost, because that may not be possible, but by releasing the grip I kept on the past. I want to let my love be real, even when it cannot be acted on with hands. I want to become lighter without becoming erased. And how will you do that? I asked. Maris answered, by practicing, by speaking, by listening, by accepting that I cannot control the tide, only swim with it, and sometimes by letting it carry me. The lamp's green light seemed to soften into a gentler hue, as if concluding. I felt a subtle change in pressure again, like the room releasing a breath. I think, Maris said, that is enough for tonight. May I close the record? I asked. Yes, she replied. Close it kindly. I reached toward the recorder and pressed stop. The red light went dark. In the silence that followed, the room did not feel empty. It felt settled, like a book closed carefully with a ribbon marker left inside. Mr. Harrow stepped forward, the first movement he had made in a long time. He looked at me, finally meeting my eyes fully. How do you feel? He asked. I searched for a word that did not sound like a cliche. Changed, I said. He nodded, as if he had expected that. Write your final notes, he said. Then we will leave the lamp on for a few minutes. She likes that. I wrote slowly, not wanting to lose the texture of the conversation. My key remained in my pocket. I could feel it there like a small promise, a piece of metal that knew what it meant to open something and return. When my notes were done, Mr. Harrow led me back through the hallway of photographs. The faces in the frames looked different now. Not haunted, not spooky, simply held. As if each photograph was a small agreement between the living and the dead. At the lobby door, Mr. Harrow stopped. Remember, he said, do not set the key down outside. I won't, I said. He opened the door. The harbour air came in, cold and salted. The quay was quiet. A few lights shimmered on the water like scattered coins. As I stepped out, I felt a brief sensation. Not on my skin, exactly, but in my awareness. The faint impression of someone standing in the doorway behind me, watching with calm attention. I did not turn. I did not want to make it into spectacle. I simply paused on the steps and whispered, not into the recorder, not into the archive, but into the night itself. Thank you, Maris. The door closed softly. The museum remained. And in some layer beneath the obvious world, a patient voice continued. Not trapped, not raging, but practicing its own quiet form of becoming. Chapter 6. The Last Lantern and the Gentle Descent. Days later, when I listened back to the recording, I noticed something that was not dramatic, but was unmistakably present. In several places where Maris spoke of kindness, the lamp's faint electrical hum shifted. Not loudly, not like a glitch, more like a breath taken at the same time as a word. The recorder caught it because machines are good at catching what humans overlook. I transcribed the interview into the archive format required. Speaker identifiers, timestamps, contextual notes. And as I did, I found myself slowing down, as if my own mind wanted to imitate the pace of her speech. The archive is, in part, a discipline of attention. I returned to Stillwater Key one more time, not to demand another interview, but to fulfill an obligation that felt both practical and symbolic. Mr. Harrow had mentioned in passing that the museum's funding had not been restored and that the city council was considering selling the building. I could not stop a council with one conversation, but I could do what archives always ask of us: make the record harder to discard. I brought copies of the transcript. I brought a letter addressed to the council, written without sensational language. I did not use words like haunting. I used words like cultural heritage, community memory, ethical stewardship. I included quotes from the interview without claiming more than I could prove. I framed it as an oral history record. I asked for reconsideration, for grants, for partnerships, and I brought something else: a small portable speaker and an old recording of a quiet song, the kind that sounds like a person humming while working. Mr. Harrow met me at the door again, cardigan and all. His tiredness was still there, but there was also a kind of steadiness, as if he had been reinforced by the simple fact that someone else now carried part of the museum's story. "You came back," he said. "I said I would," I replied, "and I brought something." He looked at my hands. "The key?" "In my pocket," I said. He nodded. "Good." We returned to the lantern room. The cabinets were unchanged. The green lamp waited like a patient eye. Mr. Harrow turned it on, and the pool of green light formed on the table as it had before. We sat. We did not rush to speak. We let the room settle. After a few minutes, I spoke aloud, not into a recorder this time, but into the careful quiet. "Maris," I said, "I brought music, if you would like it." The lamp's light softened. A small pressure change touched the air, like a hand hovering near a page. Then her voice arrived, gentle as before, threaded through the room. "You returned," she said. "Yes," I replied. "Is it all right if I play the song?" "It is all right," Maris said. "Thank you for asking." I set the small speaker on the table and pressed play. The song was simple, mostly humming, with a faint instrument beneath it, like a tide. It filled the lantern room without overwhelming it. It was the kind of music that does not demand attention, but invites it. The lamp's green light brightened slightly, not as a performance, as a response. Mr. Harrow closed his eyes. I watched his face. He looked, for a moment, like someone listening to something he had not allowed himself to want. When the song ended, Maris spoke again. "It is strange," she said, "to hear music and not be able to join it." "I'm sorry," I said. "Do not be sorry," she replied. "Be present. That is better." I took a breath. "Maris, I wrote the transcript. I wrote a letter. I cannot promise the building will be saved, but I can promise the record will not be quiet again." There was a pause. Then Maris said, "That is enough. You cannot control the council. You can only do your part. Do not become like me." The directness stung, but it was not cruel. It was the kind of honesty that keeps you from stepping onto the same damp stair. "I understand," I said. Mr. Harrow opened his eyes. "There is something else," he said, his voice careful. He looked toward the lamp as if looking toward Maris without forcing her into a corner. "What is it?" I asked. Mr. Harrow swallowed. "The city will vote next month," he said. "If the building is sold, I will not be able to stay. I am not young. I cannot fight forever. I keep thinking, what happens to her if I leave? The question hung in the air like the scent of salt. Maris answered before I could. "If you leave, Harrow, I will not blame you," she said, and her voice carried a softness that felt like a hand laid gently on his shoulder again, that shawl of cooled air. "But," Mr. Harrow said, and his voice cracked slightly, "I do not want you to be scattered." Maris replied, "I do not want to be scattered either, but listen carefully. I am not only held by this building, I am held by the way you remember me. I am held by the fact that you speak my name kindly. I am held by the record now, and I am held by my own practice of letting go." Mr. Harrow's shoulders trembled slightly. He did not cry loudly. He simply sat, and the green light held him. "Maris," I said, "is there something we can do? Something specific?" Maris was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Yes, there is one object in this museum that could carry me if the building is lost." Mr. Harrow straightened. "Which?" Maris said. "The lantern lens. The large one. The one that once sat atop the lighthouse before the lighthouse was replaced by a newer system. That lens has held more light than anything else here. It has been looked at by thousands of eyes. It has guided ships. It has absorbed fear and relief. It is saturated with attention. If it is moved with respect, if it is kept in a place where people still understand what it is for, it could hold my coherence long enough for me to choose what comes next." "A lantern lens," I repeated, imagining thick glass, heavy, faceted. Mr. Harrow nodded slowly. "It is in storage, in a crate. We rarely display it because it is too heavy and too fragile." Maris said, "Yes, that one." I asked, "Do you want it displayed so people can see it?" Maris answered, "Not necessarily. Display can become spectacle. I want it cared for. If the building survives, keep it here. If the building does not, place it in a library or a museum that still believes in the agreement between living and dead. Or place it in a lighthouse again, if such a thing exists. Let it do what it was made to do. Hold light. Light is a good home." Mr. Harrow whispered, "I can do that, if I have time." Maris said, "You will do what you can. Do not punish yourself for what you cannot." The phrase sounded like the lesson she had been learning herself. I reached into my pocket and felt my key again. It was warm now from my hand, ordinary and solid. I thought of doors and how many ways there are to cross them. "Maris," I said, "I want to ask you about something you said before, about unfinished sentences. Can we finish one tonight? Together?" Maris's voice softened. "Which one?" I hesitated, then chose the one that felt most like a door she'd been afraid to open. "Tomlin," I said, "the man who asked you to leave. If he could hear you now, what would you say? Not as regret alone, as truth." The room felt very still. The lamp's light steadied like a held breath. Maris spoke slowly, and each word felt placed carefully, like an object being returned to its proper drawer. "I would say, Tomlin, you were right. I did not know how to be loved without turning it into a task. I am sorry I made you wait in my hallway while I filed my life away. I do not know what became of you, but I hope you found warmth. I hope you built ships that held together. I hope someone laughed with you the way you laughed with me. You were not a distraction. You were a door I did not walk through. I see that now." As she spoke, the air in the lantern room cooled slightly, not unpleasantly. It felt like evening air after a hot day, a relief. Mr. Harrow's eyes were wet again. He did not wipe them. He let them be. Maris continued, "And I would add, thank you for loving me anyway, even when I was difficult to reach. The last sentence landed like a soft weight. I sat very still, letting it settle. "Maris," I said, "that is finished." "It is," she replied. "And it is not, but it is closer. That is what matters." I asked, "Do you believe he can hear you?" Maris paused. "I do not know," she said, "but speaking it changes me. Sometimes that is enough." The song's faint echo in the room was gone now, but the sense of having offered something remained. I turned to Mr. Harrow. "The lantern lens," I said quietly. "We should document it properly. Provenance, condition, handling instructions. If it must move, it should move with its story." Mr. Harrow nodded, grateful for the practical task. Practical tasks are often the way humans survive emotion. "We can do that," he said. Maris said, "Yes, do that. And when you write with respect. The objects know the difference." I did not argue. In this place, I believed it. We spent the next hour going through the catalogue records for the lens. Mr. Harrow fetched a binder, thick with notes. The museum's handwriting was consistent across decades, a continuity of care. We made updates. We added a note about its significance as a community artifact. We added a note about its historical function. We did not add a note about Maris, not in explicit terms. Not yet. Not because we were ashamed, but because the world outside this room would treat that note differently than it deserved. Some records need time before they can be placed openly without being misused. When we finished, Mr. Harrow returned the binder to a cabinet. The drawer slid shut with a soft click like closure. The lamp still glowed green. "Maris," I said, "I will leave you with something. Not my key. I was instructed to keep it with me, but I can leave you a sentence." Maris's voice warmed slightly. "What sentence?" I thought for a moment, then chose a sentence that felt like an offering rather than a claim. "I will remember you correctly," I said. The lamp's green light softened as if the room smiled. "That is a good sentence," Maris replied. "Thank you." Mr. Harrow stood. "We should go," he said quietly. "She will rest." I did not know what rest meant for someone without sleep, but I understood the shape of it. A loosening, a quieting, a return to her own layer without the strain of pressing into ours. I stood as well. Before leaving the lantern room, I asked, "Maris, may I close this visit?" "Yes," she said. "Close it kindly." I nodded, as if to the lamp, as if to the room, as if to a colleague who had shared something difficult. As we walked back through the hallway, the photographs seemed less like faces trapped behind glass, and more like doors left slightly open, not for haunting, for remembering. At the lobby, Mr. Harrow unlocked the front door and let in the harbour air again. Outside, the quay was brighter than it had been on my first visit. The sun was low, making the water look like hammered metal. On the steps, I paused and did something small but important. I took the key out of my pocket and held it for a moment, feeling its weight, its grooves, its honest familiarity. Then I put it back, as instructed, and did not set it down. Because anchors matter. Because objects remember. Because the living, if they choose, can become part of an archive that is not only about loss, but about continuity. As I walked away from the museum, I looked back once. The building did not loom. It did not threaten. It simply stood, enduring, like a person who has learned to wait. And somewhere inside, in a layer of awareness, like varnish, like salt film, like the other side of a tide, Maris Pell practiced being lighter without being erased. This was a quiet archive story, where the story ends, sleep begins,